report from Kotaku came out yesterday announcing that EA has canceled its open world Star Wars game, which for those of you not in the know, this is like the third time I think this game has been canceled. Originally, it was a game being developed by Volition Studios, and it was supposed to be sort of a mix between Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Tomb Raider, and you were going to fly around with a bunch of dudes in a spaceship and be a pirate and do all kinds of ship battle, but also have boots on the ground sort of shooting gameplay. That game ultimately got scrapped when Amy Hennig, who is the lead writer of most of the Uncharted series and Legacy of Kain, came on board. She basically was making Star Wars Uncharted, which is the game we saw at E3. I don't know, 3 years ago? Yeah, that might have been 3 years ago. And that got canceled and turned into what we now know, or were to have known as Project Ragtag, which was basically the Uncharted game was canceled and all of its assets were moved around EA, and a bunch of studios were basically working on the game, trying to make this open world game from what had previously been made. Well, it's canceled again. The report goes on to say that the game was now being codenamed Orca, was very early in development, and would involve playing as a scoundrel or a bounty hunter who could explore various open world planets and work with different factions across the Star Wars universe. That all sounds really cool, but apparently the reason it got canceled was because there was another Star Wars game in development that is closer to being done, and they want that game to come out in 2020, which is, I guess, around the same time that the new console generation is set to begin, at least based on all of the rumors we've been hearing. There's going to be a PlayStation 5 and an Xbox 2 or whatever they're going to call it. I'm, of course, kind of sad because I've been following this game. It feels like we've all been following this project, even though it's not even the same game. It hasn't been the same game multiple times and for years. We've been following this game for a long time, and I don't know if it's ever going to come out. Now, we do know there are Star Wars games coming, like at the end of 2019, we are supposed to get Jedi Fallen Order, which is the game by Respawn, which sounds really cool, and I'm excited about that. Who knows what's going on with Battlefront, if the roadmap will continue, or if there will be a third game, or what. We don't really know. And also, we don't know what this smaller Star Wars title that's supposed to come out in 2020 is supposed to be. That being said, it is interesting how EA has been handling the license, and I feel like a lot of this comes down to just people being hyper aware of what is going on behind the scenes in terms of Star Wars games. EA, I think, has had the exclusive license to make Star Wars games for the last 5 years, and they're in a 10-year deal. And they've only managed to make 2 Battlefront games and cancel 2 other games. And so that doesn't seem great. Like, from the outside, you're like, man, I really wish we had more Star Wars games coming out. Like, where are my, where are my story-based Star Wars games? We're not really getting them. And it's sad because I want them too. And I know everybody's going to want to put the blame on tons of things. They're going to be like, oh, the franchise is dying, or EA is really bad at managing their game studios, or, there's a multitude of problems. The fact is, we don't really know what's going on with a lot of these games, but I truly would not be surprised if Disney is eyeing different ways to handle Star Wars games in the future after this deal with EA ends. They've seen some great success with Marvel, at least so far. They have given Insomniac basically the keys to the kingdom when it comes to Spider-Man, and they made one of the most profitable, fastest selling PlayStation exclusives ever. There's a bunch of other Avengers-based games coming out. There's all kinds of other things coming out of Marvel, and that's exciting. And the good thing about that is that they don't have an exclusivity deal with Sony or, another big publisher. They're kind of just letting game studios make really good games, and they have the Marvel Games Group going on, doing all that work. I think the main tragedy here is that when Disney acquired Lucas, they basically went about a few things the wrong way. Like, I don't know if any of you are tapped into Star Wars fandom or the rights, the broadcast rights for the movies, that whole drama that was going on. Apparently, Turner owns all of the broadcasting rights for every Star Wars movie up to Solo, and Disney basically just sold those back to Turner right when they bought Star Wars because they thought, oh, this is the way it's been, we'll just keep that going. Not thinking about the fact that they were going to open up a streaming service in the form of Disney Plus a few years later, and would probably want those rights back so that they could put the movies on the streaming service. Now they're kind of trying to negotiate with Turner to try and get those back, but I doubt they're going to get them back, and I doubt we're going to see Star Wars movies on Disney Plus until 2020, 2021, whenever that ends. I feel like they handled the Star Wars games side in a similar fashion. They came in and were like, well, we want people to be making Star Wars games. Who currently has Star Wars games going on right now? Well, EA's got the Old Republic MMO, which is still going on, and they're still sort of supporting, but it's sort of in just support mode. They're not really releasing new content for. Well, EA is going to bid a bunch of money, and they're going to be the ones to exclusively make Star Wars games. So whatever, we'll just do that and have that work. Well, it turns out that that's not really working out super well, as we've only got two games which were fine. I think Battlefront 2 is really good now, but the main issue is that at launch, both of these games were met with some saltiness and just not amazing reviews and not amazing public support. People are not super keen on EA's Star Wars games. And that's unfortunate because I think that they've done okay work, but I think that they are not necessarily giving a large audience what they want. And they keep canceling these projects mainly because the studios can't seem to get them off the ground, or the timing isn't right, but it's very strange. And I think that ultimately what would do the franchise or the IP justice, I guess is the word I would use, is they need to take a Marvel approach when this deal ends. All of that being said, I personally don't see EA getting an exclusivity deal again after this. Mainly because I just don't think that Disney is super happy with the release or the lack of releases of Star Wars games that have been coming out. They could be earning a lot of money. Star Wars is a huge franchise. It has a huge amount of fans, and a lot of those fans play those video games, and a lot of people who aren't even that keen on Star Wars play those games and love them. I love first-person shooters, and I know a lot of people that also really love first-person shooters, but you know, sometimes it's nice to have something else. Like, we know that Jedi Fallen Order's coming out, and that is probably going to be a big hit, but unless that game is a massive hit, I don't see how EA keeps the license around. I don't know if Disney pulls it back sooner. I don't think they necessarily can. But anyways, with that sad news, it's good to know that there's at least some good news coming out of this in the form of knowing that there's another Star Wars game coming out in 2020. So at least we know that there's a Star Wars game at the end of this year, and a God of War-esque action game in the form of Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn. And next year we have some other Star Wars game coming out. And then of course there's Battlefront content. So it's not completely dry. But I think people are just sad. They want certain things. Like, we kind of want a new Knights of the Old Republic. We want RPGs, and we want other types of games. We want maybe another Imperial Commando or something like that. Or, I'm sorry, Republic Commando. I'll take Imperial Commando though too. But I don't know. Sad news. I really wish that we had gotten that Black Flag game overall, because it just sounds amazing, but apparently just couldn't get it to work. I don't know. How are you guys feeling in the comments? Please let me know what kind of Star Wars game you'd like to see in the future, and do you think EA gets to keep the Star Wars license after the next 5 years or whenever the deal's supposed to end? Thanks, guys, gals, everything in between. Love you. Bye.